about onboarding also in phases.
Mhm.
And one of the phase that I think is just completely neglected is defining the new hire's purpose. So like job descriptions are everywhere. They're all over the place. There's some great ones, there's some terrible ones. And usually that's where I find people make mistakes is they use that job description to define purpose, but
Right.
it's not the same. When a new
Y'all new to the game.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you motivational tips and tactics and strategies for your sales development career, your sales career, and also your entrepreneurial career, as I believe that sales development is the mantra and focal point of your career and also for your life because we use it every single day. And today I have Emily, manager training enablement at Threatstack. And the topic we're going to dive into today is onboarding new hires and then continuous development. So, Emily, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're excited about the topic today.
Yeah, hi everyone. So as Morgan mentioned, my name is Emily Rakowski. I'm over here at Threatstack and I head up our enablement and training program. How I got involved in this was actually, I just had a great manager who recognized my interest in more of the functional side of selling, to understand, the processes and ways to enable people to sort of up level their skill sets and build processes around that. So, you don't have that sort of extreme top performer with no repeatability. Something that gets me really excited is being able to up level other reps to that same caliber. So that's just a little bit about my background and how I got involved in enablement. I've been in it for about 3 years now. And it's just been a great experience so far.
Awesome. And before we dive into the questions here, you mentioned that your boss was like, hey, look, this is something you need to do. What was it that he saw in you? And then what were like the skills that he said that would make you really a good fit for this role?
Yeah, so I think what he recognized was, I'll be really honest, I wasn't sort of this, top performer that came in on day one and just had this, natural knack for selling. But what I did do was I would basically model my efforts after our top performers. And I built processes just around my own work to ensure that, I was competing with the best of the best. And I just basically learned that way how to be successful and made it really repeatable. So I was kind of this basically model citizen, I guess you could say, within our organization. And he recognized that and asked if I wanted to move, more into a management role to help do that for the rest of the team. So for a while I was a sales manager, and that was, really cool and exciting. But what I found that I didn't love was it was really about, more people management, which was fun. I love people. I love hanging out with people. But I sort of got a little lost in not being able to basically build and scale processes. And so that's how we sort of created this role that we found that was blowing up in the industry for sales enablement.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that breakdown because I'm glad that you had the distinction of, hey, look, I want to go into enablement rather than manage people. I feel like sometimes people can be tossed between both of those. So, good that you had the clarity there. And so it really comes into like the first question that I have for you is, what are the skills that a rep needs to continuously be developing on so that they can be the best sales professional that they can be long-term?
Yeah. So the way I usually break it down for reps is there's hard skills and soft skills. Some of the hard skills that I think are really important to learn throughout your career, and keep in mind, keep learning these things. But prospecting, social selling, business acumen, account mapping or org mapping, just really understanding the organization really, and then negotiation. Some of the soft skills that I think are really important to sort of orient around as a rep are coachability, your ability to adapt, relationship building, time management, risk-taking, and active listening.
What do you feel like is the most important soft skill and the most important hard skill?
That's a really good question. I believe that I would believe that business acumen is really important. I think that allows you to, as a sales rep, to just understand the entire landscape of a business in general. So then as you're selling into other businesses, you kind of have an idea around how that's going to go down. And then also internally, like we deal with so much change over here at Threatstack. And I can see some reps sort of get, thrown off their tracks a little bit by those changes. But if you can really orient and understand, why businesses make the decisions that they do, I think it just helps you, just stay confident.
Absolutely.
And then with soft skills, coachability for sure. Even if you're not naturally coachable, being minded to become coachable and taking feedback from people with an open mind, I think that's huge in your sales career.
Absolutely. And I wanted to touch on that because, when I was a manager, it was like, hey, we got to find someone who's coachable. So we obviously would hire the people that we felt were coachable. Obviously, you're enabling people for that are new hires and also continuous. So how do you help someone that's continuously growing, obviously, in their career and they're in your organization, but maybe they're hesitant to be coachable, but that the tips that you're giving them can actually impact their career?
Yeah. So if someone's, a little hesitant to the feedback or to that sort of coaching, my first instinct is to just take down all barriers and just understand that why. Go in with just all intention of building better rapport. And myself being open to feedback too, maybe my style isn't going to work with every rep. Having them sort of let me know what type of style works well for them. So then I can, enable them in a way that makes sense to them. So really just rapport building and understanding that why first and foremost, get on the same page and then move from there.
Yeah. It just doesn't come down to just yelling at them like, yo, listen what I have to say. So
I have had no success with that. So.
Would not recommend that for anyone. No, and I think that's good that we now understand what are the soft skills, what are the hard skills, because I think that's important. I think people are just like, well, I just need to learn. Maybe if you're an SDR, I'm just trying to set meetings, but you have to understand what's the skills behind that. Or I'm an AE, so the only thing I care about is closing. Well, there's other stuff you need to be learning. So definitely take note of what Emily said right there. So we move on to the next question is, how can you leverage departments in the organization to help with onboarding, right? So obviously the sales reps are going to learn from sales, but there's other departments that can impact this.
Yeah, I really love this question a lot because in my mind, you have to leverage different departments when you're onboarding someone. It's a must. You can't take sort of a sink or swim approach. It just won't work. What I found is when you try to do that is talented people, they'll fail because they don't have the resources to learn about their organization. And, untalented people, they'll just usually adopt sort of like a chip on their shoulder in your organization. So usually the way I think about it is, back in the Renaissance period, they had these sort of apprenticeship approaches to things that produced a ton of amazing artists. These artists were just, ordinary people that, found sort of this teacher that they wanted to learn from. The apprenticeship allowed them to become masters through training and, a series of steps and processes and things like that. So, they went from, essentially just grinding colors together to be basically making these masterpieces. So the way I think about onboarding is, you're sort of trying to create this next, Michelangelo within your organization.
Right.
And it can't be done in a silo, nor with just one teacher. So, I'm a team of one, but I'm a part of, Threatstack. So the way I think about it is just onboarding is a team sport. So the way I approach it is generally, I usually just set up a traditional project management plan. And the most simplistic way that someone can just think about a project management plan is, a checklist. So the way I usually explain it to, I guess when I was talking to my new boss about how I approach onboarding is I think of it like a recipe essentially. So you figure out the meal that you want to make. So you want to make, this, delicious meal that, your great grandfather made back in the day. Yeah. Get that recipe. You identify that that's what you want to eat tonight. So you figure out you have to go to this grocery store for spices. Maybe you have to go to a butcher shop for the meat. There's, probably a farmer's market nearby that you want to get fresh vegetables. You have to go to, the liquor store to pair it with some great wine or something like that.
Yeah,
you probably
absolutely.
Your mom to make sense of everything. So, and generally, when you're cooking, you're probably writing down some things so you can make it a repeatable recipe later after you sort of deciphered it and figured out what works and what doesn't work. So same with onboarding. I know that's a silly example, but it's literally the same thing. So establishing a predefined, repeatable process for onboarding is just going to reduce that amount of time you spend ramping up new hires to increase your retention overall. But I think about onboarding also in phases. And one of the phase that I think is just completely neglected is defining the new hire's purpose. So like job descriptions are everywhere. They're all over the place. There's some great ones. There's some terrible ones. And usually that's where I find people make mistakes is they use that job description to define purpose, but it's not the same. When a new hire comes in, they need to feel that they have a job to do. So like, what am I here to do? What do I have at my disposal to do it? What do I need to know to succeed? Who are the stakeholders that are, betting on my success?
Absolutely.
How measured, like what types of behaviors are rewarded or not rewarded within this culture? Those types of questions need to be asked and need to be answered for these new hires so they feel like they have a purpose.
Right.
So like an example that I thought about as I'm talking here is, basically comparing like a new hire to, maybe your top account executive who's been around for 3 years at this company. And I think like the example I'll use is product knowledge. So like what are our expectations for a new hire's product knowledge and our, most senior account executives' product knowledge? Like what are our expectations? So the first new hire example might just be my expectation as a manager is that they spend, an hour with our head of product to get a high level overview of what we do, who we are, what problem we're solving, and sort of the so what behind all of that. Maybe that's perfect. But maybe for this third year, most senior account executive, we might decide that it's having the ability to facilitate an entire sales cycle throughout the trial period. So that very technical sales cycle, filter questions, share insights, loop in technical teams, knowing sort of when to loop in technical teams, understanding business issues, technical risks, things like that within our industry, just so they, up level themselves to be sort of this expert. But it's really just identifying that key point or that, sort of meal, going back to my cooking example, you want to come across to be understood. And then you just work backwards on like what knowledge, collateral, training, talking points, parties that need to be involved to make sure that your reps are learning, understanding, retaining, and implementing.
Yeah, no, that's great. Chef Emily over here breaking it down for us on how to create this recipe. And so I really like that analogy and it makes a ton of sense there. So when you have that, what if a department, so two questions here. What if a department's reluctant to helping the sales team, right? What if there's like complete disconnect? They're like, we don't care about that. And then also you mentioned like the history, which I'm a huge history person. Sounds like you maybe too, like the apprentice, like the serfs, like how important is for reps to understand that when they come new into the role to accept that information from maybe other reps so that they can be successful?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, fortunately, I haven't really dealt with too much pushback from other organizations or departments throughout onboarding because I think everyone's excited to do so. I've received maybe some pushback from like executives that maybe need to get some face time and they're just super busy, that type of pushback I've dealt with. And it's really just, making it a part of like the bigger business goals. Like our goal as a business, one of the biggest, there's usually like 3 goals that I think about. It's, increasing revenue, decreasing cost or spend, and then mitigating risk, right? Absolutely. So if you can orient around those 3 business goals that, hopefully every business has, I think you can make a strong case if you are getting, like, hey, I'm busy, or hey, I don't have time this week to meet with them. And it's like, hey, we want to decrease cost. So like, let's get these people ramped up as quickly as possible so then they can start generating activities that lead to more revenue. And then ultimately, like, we want to mitigate all of the risk so they understand everything that they're required to understand before they hit the phones. Yeah. And then your second question was about understanding sort of that apprenticeship style type relationship as a new rep to really, not just reach out to someone like me or your manager, but like actually utilizing it cross-functionally with your peers and things like that. I think that's huge. I think if reps can come in the door and have that mindset of like, hey, I'm the new person here, or I'm like the new guy or girl that's on this team. I want to learn from everybody and pick people that stand out to you. Listen to their calls, like ask to jump on their calls, things like that, just to get as much information as you possibly can and take some of those, great nuggets that fit within your style and implement them. Usually what I suggest to people is pick one thing to change up each week or every other week. So you're not like sort of going all over the place. You're just so focused on one thing to the point where it becomes, a habit, and you don't have to think twice about doing it.
Great points there. And I think the two most impactful things are, one, hop on calls with people and figure out what's going on, because that's where you're going to have the best expertise to understand how they're really selling into that. And then two, just being upfront with those departments to say how this is how we're going to help. Fortunately, luckily you ran into that, so that's a good thing. So you've been able to do the things you need to do. But those are great points right there. And then for yourself, you're in this enablement role. You've given us some great tips so far. How have you been able to adjust? Because you're at Placer, so they're doing completely different what you're doing right now. So how are you able to adjust from that enablement standpoint to now like a completely different industry?
Yeah, so I've been asked this a few times. And at first I kind of, thought, yeah, it is different. But the more I've been in this role and the longer I'm in this role, I think I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
I think it's generally the same. Some of the meat within the content, or I guess it's different, but I guess the better way to say that is industry specific. So like, yeah, Placer was completely different than Threatstack, but I think like the framework is the same. The content would be different, but yeah, I think like the processes, methods, the grit, it all remains the same. Have you ever read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth?
I have not read it. I've heard great things about it though.
Yeah, if people should put that on their 2019 reading list. We're actually getting it for our company
Nice.
to hand out next week at our kickoff. But she says this quote in this book, and it's just amazing. And it's really how I think about my role. And it's, our potential is one thing. What we do with it is quite another. So when I look at my reps and those that I work closely with, I want them to look back at me after our working relationships end and think like, wow, I had a really great experience. I learned a lot to become a better sales professional.
Yeah.
And I want other companies to poach our people because they know that they're going through a kick-ass program and that they're learning and they're basically obtaining skill sets that make them better at selling, not better at, communicating whatever industry they're communicating.
Absolutely.
At the time. They're just becoming this high caliber sales individual that can, sell anything. That's like my overarching like belief for my role.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown, because we're talking to a lot of companies and they're talking about sales training, like, okay, so we're in this specific industry, and it was like, it really just comes down to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals, like these skills that you're going to learn, you're obviously going to be able to apply them into whatever industry that you're moving into. And exactly resonates with your point. So kind of goes to this next question, like, what is the most important thing to do to guide reps to their path as they're going from SDR to AE? Maybe they're going to AE to, maybe they're trying to go in another management role or the next level of AE. How are you guiding them to that next step?
Listen, there's a quote, I'm a big quote person too. There's another quote that I love is, listening is an art that requires attention over talent, spirit over ego, and others over self. I could be the best sales manager, trainer, and coach out there. Mm-hmm. But if I'm just talking to talk and only sharing my experiences and sort of forcing people to go down my path, it's just going to fall on deaf ears and we're all going to fail. So we might all experience similar moments in our careers, but we'd be wrong to assume that it affected us all the same way. So it's important as managers and coaches to listen to your teams, empathize, storytell, formulate plans of action so they're never feeling like they're not going to be heard. And listening is not just about, being quiet or silent. It's about being there and super present. I see a ton of managers make the mistakes of, having their computers open on Slack or answering emails or doing other things during opportunity coaching sessions or in one-on-ones and things like that, or answering their phone, texting, things like that. It's just, you got to be there for your reps. You have to be. Absolutely. So I think if you're not totally being present and holding space for your reps, you're gonna fail them, and it's just gonna be a bad relationship. So, that's listening is my biggest piece of advice to people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Listening is critical. And I think a lot of times we just want to say what we want to say, and they're always thinking about, okay, this is what I want to say next, but don't actually listening to what's going on. How can, I guess, obviously listening more is the improvement here, but what can people do to better help themselves to listen and then guide their reps in the right path where they need to go?
Yeah, one of the things that I think about with listening is that if you're truly listening, you're opening yourself up to accept things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you're allowing yourself to continue to learn. If your reps are talking and you're sort of ready to jump in, or you're like assuming like, oh, I've done that before, I know this, or this is happening, you're basically doing what you're coaching them to not do on their phone calls or their meetings, is interrupting or thinking of the next question and not listening to the answer that's happening. So it goes back to this, I guess I said listening, but it's really active listening, like be there for them. So challenge yourself to, put your phone away, challenge yourself to maybe start notating on a pen, like a piece of paper during your opportunity coaching sessions, like challenge yourself to take away sort of some of the bad habits that you've created during those times with your reps and just be there. And you as managers or coaches or trainers doing that sets that bar high. So you're giving your reps that attentiveness, you're expecting it back. So you want your reps to come prepared, take the time to basically make sure that those sessions together are as valuable as possible.
And with that right there is kind of leads into the next question, because this goes into listening. Why are quarterly assessments important? I know we talked about before we got here on the podcast why you believe in them, and then talk about the themes that we touched on, because I thought that was really impactful as well.
Yeah, sure. I think assessments are super important. They showcase how reps are progressing and learning. And they also allow managers to get some insights into if their coaching and teaching is actually effective. I think it's a great time to come together and really understand the current status of performance. How satisfied are we meaning the rep and manager, and what areas do we want to hone in on, and what areas have we started to master that we can move on from? Mm-hmm. So this is kind of circling back to our first topic today, but the themes that I generally orient around are the hard and soft skills that we've identified that the reps need to start working towards. So for example, it'd be like, account mapping. Maybe that's an overarching theme. And the ways to better account map, or the ways to better understand an organization, is through a lot of these sort of steps of doing a ton of research on the types of accounts that you're working. Like, what's your territory? Is it territory based on like location, or is it based on, commercial strategic type businesses, that sort of thing. So understanding exactly who you're targeting and really learning those businesses, and going through things like that. That's like a great way to think about it. And then maybe there are some soft skills that need to happen. So like maybe it's understanding sort of the basically like relationship building within those accounts, like who are the best people to go after within the account. How do you speak to those levels? Like you never want to, call a C-level exec and sound like you're talking to, a systems admin or something like that.
Yeah.
Generally I see reps make that mistake, and you sort of get delegated to who you sound like. So if you want to have a conversation with a C-level person, like you got to sound like one and believe in what you're doing. But anyways, back to assessments.
Yeah.
They can help motivate. They allow for focus. It's hard enough as reps balancing your pipelines, your day-to-day activities, processing all the knowledge requirements that come your way throughout your career, to also incorporate the feedback that your managers give you and also ensure that you're doing so in an effective way. So assessments allow you to sort of have that like gut check of, okay, wait, what am I working on? Okay, I'm working on, account mapping for this quarter. I need to get better at this because I lost X number of deals last quarter because I didn't have the right players. Assessments also, this is a thing that I just thought about recently because I read an article about the CEO over at Burger King. He said his like best skill is that he can hire well and he can fire well. And I know that's a little scary to think about, but the way I think about that sort of approach is as a coach, you want to make sure you have the best players on the field at all time, but not just the best players in the best positions. So if you have an awesome person on your team who's just a powerhouse, but they're not in a current role that they can be successful in, it's important as leaders to understand how to sort of guide them into a role that they can be, just as happy and successful in, that allows the business to expand. And I think assessments allow you to really understand like what your reps are actually interested in and how they're improving and evolving that way.
Through the assessments that you've done, have you seen some revealing things about reps that you wouldn't have found otherwise?
Yeah, I actually have. So I'm thinking about one rep in particular, smart kid. He worked really hard, just didn't have, sort of the conversational skills and had a lot of trouble, sort of with that in selling.
Yeah.
And it was becoming really hard to figure out different ways to make him more comfortable and confident in that. So what I found out was that we needed someone on our product marketing team at the time to start to basically figure out ways to help position our message to the market. And he knew how we wanted to. He could say it to me, couldn't say it to our customers, but I thought to myself, could he be a good fit for that role to basically bridge the gap between sales and marketing, to really take that sort of like go to market strategy and make sure that the marketing message is translated into a way that can become more specific for selling. And it was awesome. He immediately was way happier. His, life got way better because he was working on projects that were just so interesting to him. And so an assessment definitely helped me identify that.
No, that's great. And I think it's awesome that it was like, hey, you're maybe struggling in this area. This is a better area for you. And now you can see the acceleration. I know there are people that I have talked to and they've gone through certain assessments, or maybe they just had like a realization, I want to go to something different. And they were actually just be able to perform better in that other role. So that's great that you were able to move that person towards that path. And again, we appreciate you coming on the SDR Chronicles. Last question that I ask every single person that comes on the show is, what is your best piece of advice for new hires, so new SDRs, as they come into the new role?
Yeah, that's a great question. My biggest piece of advice is be curious, ask questions. Don't be afraid to just, say something. When you're new, make yourself known, get excited. Generally, people that have been in the company for a while, they're excited by new faces and new hires because it means that, new ideas are coming, creativity's coming, excitement's coming, energy's coming. So come with that. You might not know like anything about the company on day one, but know that knowledge will come and it will come fast, but bring what you can control. And that's being curious, ask questions, just, make yourself known, stand out. Cause it sort of reinvigorates the culture, and it's really exciting. I love when new hires join.
Tell people the same thing. You got to be curious. That leads to asking better questions. That leads to getting better insights from people in the company, and it just makes you become a better sales professional. So
and you're helping your peers learn immediately by asking them questions. You're sort of checking their knowledge checking them. Like, do you know this? And they're thankful for it. I promise.
Yeah, every single time.
Yep.
So Emily, as we wrap this up, is there anything lasting thoughts you want to have? Maybe you have like an impactful quote to leave us on, a shout out, a comment. What do you want to leave us with?
No, I just, I don't have any more quotes, but basically, thank you for having me. I hope everyone, starts off 2019, just like with a huge bang. It's going to be an exciting year, especially, I know I speak for myself, in, the tech startup world, but it's just going to be a massive year. I'm really excited. If anyone, wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me a message or anything, I'm always happy to hop on a call or chat or just, give advice at any time. So, reach out.
Awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much once again. As I always say, guys, keep dialing. I'll see you guys soon.